with my degree in environmental health and occupational safety and environmental health, that's what I got my Bachelor of Science degree in. I got a job in my field, and this is where I like to help my fellow female ladies in the workplace, is because I feel like we don't give ourselves much credit and we kind of hide ourselves in the room. And so the first 3 years, and this is no lie, I was, and till this day, I am always the only African American in the room. I'm always the only female in the room, and I'm always the youngest in the room. 10 years in the field, and nothing has changed. The only thing that has changed was my mindset. So in the first couple of years of my career as an environmental health and safety specialist, that's what I started out as. I was just not the worker that I am now. I was not the woman that I am now. I would shy away from the meetings, always sit in the back, pray that no one called on me and asked me any questions, because I'm like, I don't want to talk. I don't want to be here. I was not motivated at work. And it wasn't until I think my 4th year at the job, I ended up being fired. And that was the huge wake-up call, because like my whole life just kind of rolled back in my head. And I was talking to myself, like, how dare you get fired from a job because you weren't performing right? All your life, you've been a performer. All your life, you showed up and you dominated. And for you to get fired because you weren't showing up, you weren't motivated to do a job because you were doing half but work, that is unacceptable, Gladys. So I had that talk with me, and, going back to my parents, like talking to myself again, like, you've seen what your parents did. They took you literally from the ghetto to a huge house in Pennsylvania. How do you think they did that? They busted their butt. And so for you to get fired for not busting your butt, that is a slap in your parents' face. And this is the conversation I'm having with myself.
Yeah, right.
And
oh my God.
It's like, how dare you? So at that time, I knew something had to change. And so I thought to myself, why was it that I was so dominant on the court? I had all the confidence in the world, but here I'm lacking confidence. I don't know what I want. And it all went back to goal setting for me. I'm like, okay, when I played basketball, I had goals every season, every quarter, every day. I had a goal. Here in the workplace, I had no goal whatsoever. So I got huge on goal setting. Like, I love goal setting right now. So I set goals, and my top goal was, I love to travel, right? I am Caribbean. So I always thought about traveling to the Caribbean islands and just staying there for work. I visualized me getting back with my ex-boyfriend, Ryan, at that time, just having a beautiful family. And I also visualized of having a business where I could help athletes with their mental game. And so in the workplace, I went from, being shy and not talking to just being one of those dominant women you see in the workplace, looking at people in the eye, demanding that me being in the room, and it's not being rude or being disrespectful. It's just standing up for myself. Sometimes people will have that unconscious bias and say certain things to women. In the beginning, I'll just let it slide. But now it was like, hey, that's inappropriate. You cannot say that to me. Or if someone would leave me off an email, whether it was on purpose or not, is, hey, I should have been in this meeting. You left me off in this email. Let's see how we can prevent that from happening in the future. So it was me more like speaking up and having more confidence in myself. And so within, I think, 5 years, I ended up being the regional environmental health and safety engineer, where my region is actually the Caribbean. And I have an office in Aruba, Bahamas, British Virgin Islands, US Virgin Islands, and Curacao. I married my high school sweetheart, Ryan Frasso, and we have a beautiful daughter. And I have now my own business where I help people with their mindset, which is called I Am Mentally Tough. So it all came around full circle. You just have to know what you want, and you have to know how to get there. Like, that gap from where you are to where you want to get to, you have to do the work. You have to. If not, you're just not going to get it.
Isn't it so? It's, first of all, remarkable. And there's so much to dig into there in terms of intention, goal setting, backing it up with visualization, and then getting off your anatomy and getting into action. And
yeah.
But I find this interesting contrast. So freshman year, you experience this kind of erosion of self-confidence. You go back, you do some confidence conditioning, you change your behaviors, your body language, your focus, your self-talk, and you end up elevating the rest of your college career. You get into another situation that you're not familiar with, and that same kind of timid, kind of shrinking mentality came back. And I'm reminded of Tony Gonzalez when he went from playing football, because he had the same, he led the league in drop passes as in his second year in the NFL, had a big confidence lap, started his mental conditioning routine. He calls it his success routine, developed huge confidence. He said self-doubt never crept in again. Then he started broadcasting and it all came flooding back. So as we get into these new
Well, yeah.
situations, we can expect it. But what you went back to was your standbys, your self-talk. You had this
Hmm.
great conversation with yourself
Yeah.
of who am I? This isn't who I am.
Yeah.
You know, how can I change this?
Yeah.
I can visualize what I want to change. And then you created all of that change. So it's
Yeah.
what a great testament to creating self-confidence.
Yeah.
Because I think
And
it's the number one variable for success. And I think, self-confidence comes from, I think knowing what we want, having good, healthy self-talk, and having good focus and good body language.
absolutely. And oh, I had something on my head and I completely forgot what it was. But and I just was so the first time where and again, twice I lost my confidence, twice I was able to bring it back. And I think the first time around it was back to, the self-talk and reminding myself who I was. This time it was something different. And so with basketball, I had the luxury to going back to experience of what I've done and how that could help me. With this new job, I couldn't go back because this was my first job. I couldn't go back to experience where it was in the workplace, corporate America. So it was about, now let's look ahead. Instead of looking back, let's look ahead and let's goal set and see where we want to go. So that was that motivation for me. Like, this is the life I can have. All I have to do is go back to what I know, which is working your butt off and getting what you want. And at that time is about, if anything is not aligned with your goals or your vision, you have to cut it off. And I was not afraid to cut it off because I knew, hey, this is not helping me get to where I want to go and what I wanted to do. And so the reason why my boyfriend and I broke up back then was because he didn't align with my goals. I'm sorry. I'm like, sorry, Rye, you have to go. But I am spending my time and energy to be on this team. And it was my sophomore year where unfortunately, had the breakup at that time because he was not aligned with my goals and I wasn't afraid of cutting somebody off to get to where I needed to be. And that's what I did. And we have to know who we can cut off, what's the risk of cutting people off, what's the cost of cutting people off. And at that time, it just wasn't beneficial for me to keep going back home, traveling to see my boyfriend, where I know that 45-minute trip, the weekend staying with him, I could have spent that time working on my game. And this is what I really wanted. So that's the sacrifice I had to make back then.
One of the words that jumps out at me is, as you and I are talking, and by the way, as much as I admired you in the brief amount of times that we've spent regularly speaking, I mean, you've turned the dial way up for me. I mean, you're just such an amazing woman. And I just love the passion you have, and who you are speaks, there's this, I think it was Ralph Waldo Emerson says, who you are speaks so loudly, I can't hear a word you're saying. We don't have to tell people who we are. We can just be who we are. And you are
Yeah.
such an authentic person.